Welcome to Medicine Motherhood and Missions, the podcast where we dive deep into impactful and inspiring conversations with amazing professionals who've turned their challenges into stepping stones for success. I'm Johanna, your host, and each time we meet, we'll explore the stories and journeys of remarkable individuals who are PAs, doctors, professionals, mothers, and mission-driven changemakers, from the halls of the hospitals to the hearts of our homes, and into the communities we serve. Join us as we uncover the challenges, triumphs, and everything in between, and see life through each other's perspective. If you're seeking fulfillment in your career and life, I've got something special for you too. Download our free guide on how to be a fulfilled provider. It's packed with tips and insights to help you thrive while balancing the many hats you wear. And for all those parents out there dreaming big while raising little ones, check out Little Evie's Big Dreams children's book series, available now on Amazon. These heartwarming stories inspire kids to chase their own dreams, just like you're chasing yours. So grab your favorite cup of coffee or tea, settle in, and get ready for uplifting conversations that will leave you inspired and equipped to make a greater impact. Let's jump in. Hi friends, I'm so excited today. We have Sarah Latham, a mom of 2 teens and 2 young adults. She's been learning to parent as a child of the Father. She's been freed from perfectionism. Sarah is passionate about encouraging parents to connect with their children's hearts and stress less about behavioral outcomes. You can find her at Bewise, and I'll have that in the show notes. But today's podcast, we're diving deep into the heart of parenting. Not the picture perfect kind of appearance-based parenting or what the outward appearance of everything looks like. We want to dive deep into rooted connections, humility, grace. If you've ever felt the pressure to have it all together, worried that your child's behavior reflects your worth as a parent, this conversation is for you. We're talking about breaking free from those performance-based parenting, embracing those imperfections, raising children who know they are loved, not for what they do or accomplish, but for who they are. So let's get into it. Let's dive in. Listen in. Thank you so much for listening. Hi, Sarah. And so thank you so much for being here today on the Medicine Motherhood Missions podcast. I'm so excited to talk to you about Bewise parenting and everything that entails. And thank you so much for coming on the show.
Thank you for having me. This will be a really fun conversation.
Yes, I'm so excited. It's so amazing how, just getting on Instagram these days, you can make these connections. And I love that because the first conversation we had, I felt like we, had such a good connection that I really enjoyed talking to you. And so really looking forward to this conversation with you, Sarah. Tell us a little bit about yourself and what you started on, why you started this journey to Bewise parenting and what got you into it.
I am a wife. I'm a biological and adoptive mom of 4. I homeschool my kids. I have been home with them for 20 years. It's my absolute dream. I get to live my dream life.
Yeah.
I also mentor women and have worked in different ministries alongside my husband for many years. And about almost 2 years ago, I really felt the Lord impressing on my heart the desire to write. And I had always enjoyed writing words in general, but I didn't have an outlet for it. And I was really feeling the need, like I just feel like I need to start writing something and creating in that way. And I thought, well, what would I write about? What am I most passionate about? And parenting is what I've always been the most passionate about, and how the Lord parents us and our identity as His children. And so I started writing. I started ParentWise on Instagram as a way to kind of just put something out there and kind of practice using my voice. And so that's been officially around for about 14 months. And I feel like it's been truly a passion project with the Lord. It feels like time with him and time in his presence when I'm sitting down to write, or when he's just kind of sparking something in me, and I'll jot something down in my phone wherever I am, stopped waiting for my kids. I'm in the car, or I'm in the kitchen, or just after a parenting moment. And so I get to just kind of express that in a different way. And I really enjoy encouraging people. So this has been, like you said, what an interesting thing that through social media, we can actually make heartfelt connections with people. That's something that I love about it. And I've been able to encourage a lot of parents, a lot of young moms through Instagram. And that is extremely fulfilling to me. I love to be an encourager and to point people to truth and to remind them who they are, how the Lord sees them, how he delights in them, and how through his Spirit we can do the same with our children, and what a gift they are.
Yeah. It's really amazing also just how, you wanted to write a book, but this platform, you thought you'd just use it as a way of practice. And it's become a platform to share to a whole lot more people than you probably would have imagined, your gifts, your talents, and a ministry. And even before the book even gets published. So
Yes, it's
that's,
really, it's helped me to kind of narrow down what
uh,
would I write a book about. It really has helped in that way.
yeah, I love that. And how, you're already able to encourage so many people with this short, quick, easy bites of information. And so you mentioned also that you write these little things like when you're, in the car and, just here and there. And that struck a chord with me real quick because I love journaling and I used to journal all the time. But lately, this last 6 months, I have just been so, I don't know, just cannot find the time to do it. And so I love that you're just like, whenever you have a second, just writing something down, I guess, in notes or on a journal, or how are you doing that?
Yep, I just keep it in notes. I've got many pages of those now. And it's just something he impresses upon my heart. It might not be fully fleshed out yet, but sometimes it is. Sometimes it's just like a phrase or a sentence, and it lands, and I'm like, that's it. That's what I want to say. It's done. Or I'll go back later and kind of expand, look up some verses, do a little bit of background research, or some definitions that I want to look into, and then kind of flesh it out. And then, I get to sit down on my computer and make the slides. I usually will put on worship music. I'll have a cup of tea. It's a very rejuvenating, creative time for me that I really enjoy.
Yeah, that's amazing. And that's such a great, great little habit to have as well, to just keep those things that are on your heart, write it down and have that going even on the go. And so what does wise parenting mean? You chose the word be wise parenting. It seems very overarching and sometimes overwhelming, because sometimes we're like, we pray, we want to be wise, but like how can we be wise? And maybe you could try to give maybe your top 3 things that have been prominent in your understanding of being wise in parenting.
Absolutely. And this is definitely developed over time. I know when I was a new mom, I read a lot of books and I listened to women who were ahead of me, further down the line, and really tried to decide how I wanted to shape my parenting. What kind of parenting model did I want to follow? And as I've now been doing this for 20 years, it's really shifted from a parenting model and much more of a focus on the Lord. So if I were to say the top 3 things, the first thing is that all of parenting wisdom is found in the heart of the Father. He is the ultimate model for us as a parent. He's the only perfect parent, and he's the one that we can look to for any kind of parenting and relational thing that we need to find. So all of that wisdom is found in his heart and his heart toward us. And the second thing is our identity as his children. I feel very strongly that when we understand our identity as his child, that is what informs and transforms our parenting. Because if we don't understand that we are his children, accepted and loved regardless of what we've done, what we haven't done, and that his love for us has nothing to do with our performance or our achievements, then we act that way with our own children. So we have to understand our identity as his children, and that gives us the freedom to love our kids apart from how they act, what they do, that we are pursuing their hearts just like he pursues us. And the third thing is being very open and teachable to the Spirit working in our hearts and in our minds, allowing him to speak to us in those difficult parenting moments where you hear that still small voice in your spirit, and you might, stop speaking at a certain moment or not say something that you were going to say, or you might address your child differently rather than going after the behavior that you don't like, and you go for their hearts, because that is how the Lord pursues us from the inside out. He doesn't want us to clean ourselves up on the outside and then become presentable to him. He's looking for connection with our hearts, and that is what creates transformation on the outside.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. The first thing that came to me was the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. And that's why, as you said, seeking the Lord and putting him first in our lives also allows us to understand where and how to be the best parent we can be. And then understanding how he calls us a child of God. And that allows us to have that parent-child relationship from above, right? And then translate that vertically to our children as well. And so that's as a faith, based thought process to parenting is what I think is, as you say, critical to us being able to really help our children know who they are and have that strong foundation that can really carry them through the rest of their lives. Yeah. And so, can you share a time when letting go of perfect parenting led to a deeper bond with your child? Because you had mentioned the perfectionism, or the in the top three things that can lead us to better parenting. Perfect parenting. How can we let go of that idea? Because sometimes we feel like being wise, you would feel like you would maybe attain perfection, right? But it really isn't.
Yeah, that's an impossible attempt.
Yeah.
For sure. I think that what you said is letting go, and that's very much part of it. There is a lot of letting go of control and letting go of things that don't matter. Because in our parenting, I think when we start out, we're so zealous to do everything correctly and to raise not perfect humans, but we really want to raise these amazing little people who have strong character and who make right choices. And those are all good and well, but sometimes we get a little fixated on that. And we kind of forget that a lot of the things that we want to see on the outside will actually happen when we're focused on the inside. And so for me, that has been a lot of letting go of things that don't matter. And that might be how clean one of my kids keeps their room, or what my standard is of that. Battles over what to eat, all of these things that can become real barriers to connection that aren't that important. So I've had to learn to really boil it down to the things that are important. That is my connection with them, and influencing them through that connection for them to have their own relationship with the Lord, and for those character things to come about as they are seeking Him and learning about Him. And that's not to say that we don't teach all of these things. We're still teaching all of them and modeling them and talking about them at our home, all of these character traits and habits that we want to instill in our kids. But for me, I've just learned to let go of a lot of the things that aren't that important. I feel like as I began raising teenagers, I was forced to do that. That's part of becoming a teen parent. We have to let go of so much. And I can even, look back on the earlier years when I was parenting younger kids and just see things like, what, that really didn't matter that much. I didn't have to make that big of a deal over something. There really are few things that matter. Those are the things that we want to keep our focus on.
Yeah. I think back to because this conversation and, thinking about perfectionism in parenting, because I'm still a parent of a toddler, or almost out of the age of toddler. She's 5, so she's almost out of it. But, I still think of her as little baby sometimes. But so when she, was little baby, we take those perfect pictures, we take these perfect things, and we want to perfectly document every milestone. And I know maybe 10 years ago, 20 years ago, that wasn't really as, available or popular, but now it really is. And I think that kind of makes it so hard for parents, especially now, because we're documenting these perfect pictures and perfect things. And, so from the very beginning, we're kind of setting this standard and expectation of perfectionism. And so it's so hard for us, I feel, to let go. And because we're looking at these pictures and we're wanting to replicate that in real life. And, when the little one is having an outburst at the grocery store, and we're shh, come on, calm down. That's not, and it's we're not, we're focusing on maybe controlling every situation, that we're maybe losing that educational moment of connection with the child. What are your thoughts on that?
The meltdown in the grocery store, that is really difficult. I definitely remember those. I think tantrums are so triggering to us as parents. We get embarrassed, we get angry, we're looking around, we just don't want our kids acting so wild, and we feel like it's personal, like they're doing it on purpose, or they're doing it to embarrass us. And most likely it's developmental. That's the stage that they're in, that they have big emotions and feelings, and they simply don't know how to express them. And they're also uninhibited in their expression. And that's not a bad thing, because a lot of us as adults are relearning how to feel our emotions, how to name our emotions. So there's a part of that I don't want young children to lose. I don't want us to train them out of their feelings in general. Yeah. But those little ones have big feelings that they just don't know how to express and deal with at 2, 3, 4. Yeah. And so in those moments, I would often try and remove the child and really try to focus on what they're needing in the moment, rather than all of the, eyes that are watching me, or what's going on, around me. And that's not easy to do, because, you start getting sweaty, and you just it's just a horrible, stressful thing. Yeah. And if you have more than one child, now you have others who are tagging along, and you may have to grab them, or they might be reacting as well. So It's not an easy situation, but in those moments,
Mhm.
the child who's melting down really just has a dysregulated nervous system and first needs to be regulated. So that might be, okay, we're leaving our cart in the store and we are walking outside to the car or just even to get fresh air and get some sun and first regulate that nervous system
Yeah.
before anything else can happen, because
Mhm.
that's not a teachable child in that moment.
Mhm.
But connection can happen after they are regulated,
Mhm.
rather than shame for
Yeah.
acting a certain way that,
Mhm.
like I said, most of the time that might not be in their control at that age to
Mhm.
actually have, that much self-control to be able to stay calm and, express themselves. I mean, we
Yeah.
understand that as adults that
Mhm.
we have trouble staying calm.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
how much more so, for a 3-year-old child
Yeah.
to be expected to remain calm and in control all the time?
Yeah. And I think, like, even for parents, like in those situations, we have to kind of relearn how to remain calm too. Because otherwise, sometimes we let our anger and emotions overwhelm, and, just because of the stress and situation. And that's like an extreme example of, when our emotions, when our feelings get involved with, the child's. And because we're trying to portray perfection and forgetting that connection, right? And so, um, you have teens, and you mentioned, shame, because, the we wanted to, for toddlers, take them out of that situation, so that we don't allow them to be shamed for their, outwardly, like, they have more dramatic, or maybe teens can be dramatic too, I think, right?
For
In
sure.
different ways.
Yeah.
But how do we, like, react to teens that might be going through those types of um, emotions, but in their own different ways, and trying to, as parents, not shame them, um, because we feel they're not fitting into our perfect ideal child. How do we go about that?
I think for all ages of children,
Mhm.
remembering that each one of our kids is the Lord's masterpiece, that and not mine. They are not my masterpiece, they're his masterpiece. And
Mhm.
he's created them with a unique purpose, with unique gifts, with a unique plan.
Mhm.
And so for me, learning to discover what that is for each child is really fun and exciting.
Mhm.
It's really kind of an adventure, and it's something that you get to do for your child's entire life, that
Mhm.
you get to discover who it is that the Lord has made them. And that is what we then grow and foster and train.
Mhm.
Not my ideal of how this child should be, but
Mhm.
who has the Lord made them to be? And individually for each child, what are their strengths or weaknesses, things that we want to, weaknesses that we want to be very gentle with,
Mhm.
strengths that we want to grow even more,
Mhm.
and knowing how to do that with each individual child. So that's kind of across the board. I think
Mhm.
with teenagers, our connection looks a little bit different because we are getting a lot closer to their independence.
Yeah.
And so all of the teaching and all of the talking to that we do, the instruction with young
Mhm.
children, really starts to take a back seat with teenagers. And we take on gradually, not all at once, but we start to gradually take on more of a mentor role with them.
Mhm.
That was kind of the word that I had to learn to help my mind and heart shift
Mhm.
my role as a parent of teens,
Mhm.
going from, like I said, the instructor, the guide, the instructor, the nurturer of younger children.
Mhm.
When my oldest was a teenager, I didn't know how to be the parent of a teen. I had to learn that as well.
Yeah.
But I did have practice in mentoring others. So
Mhm.
that was the switch for me, because
Mhm.
I became more of a mentor role to my teenagers. And I had to become a lot more curious. I had to listen a lot more than I spoke, and really take advantage of the moments when they were willing and wanting to talk. Those are, golden moments with teenagers. And they often happen at night when you are in bed or really wanting to go to bed. But that's when you just like, okay, I'm going to be awake because we're talking now. And it's super important. Whenever they want to talk, it is like phone down, eye contact, doesn't matter what I'm doing. And that's easier said than done. I get it. And I'm very task oriented. So I have something, a huge list on my mind all the time that I need to be doing. But when those teenagers want to talk, it's super important to be available, emotionally available to them. And I have found that, like I said, doing a lot less instructing, letting them come to me, being willing to hear them out without necessarily telling them what to do or giving them advice unless they ask my opinion for it, has really kept an open line of communication with us. And I know with my oldest are 20 and 18, so they're young adults, and we have a great friendship now, which is so fun. That feels like that's the fruit of all of the years.
Yeah, that's the beauty of that connection that that you've built over time with them through the years, and then going back to the being gentle with their weaknesses, and trying to foster their strengths. But I was reading an article or something recently that was talking about how, like, sometimes we get frustrated and we just immediately, if they're in their weaknesses or in their failures, so to speak, we just we'll take this away and we'll take that away and we'll stop this. And it may be something they enjoy doing versus the other thing that they're not really doing that well in, and so is that, also a way we're projecting our own hopes or fears on our children when we're just like demanding or focusing on weaknesses that we think should be strengths, or failures where they need building, and just a little bit more, what's a good word, like care, versus just us being like, you didn't do this, you didn't do that, and so this is the consequence. And you know what I mean?
Yes. I'm a big fan of natural consequences. So if there is, a misbehavior, then maybe something is lost for a time. A huge part of the training and guiding, as opposed to shaming, is in our regulation and in our tone, because I can give a consequence really calmly. I mean, it's really matter of fact. This happened, so this happened. And I don't have to blow up about it and create this shaming moment, which is a huge disconnect, with my child. And so that, yes, I'm big on natural consequences, but there are so many times when our kids just need to be guided. They need to have a redo. They need to be allowed to have a redo. And not every little thing must have a consequence or a punishment. There are so many things our kids do wrong that aren't willful disobedience. They're just immaturity. And they just need to practice. And so we want to create a safe place in our homes to practice being human. They are practicing all their relational skills. They're learning and practicing how to have all these executive functioning skills and these relational skills. And they just need time to practice. And they need someone to come alongside them to help them in those areas that are weak. They don't necessarily need to have, like we said, a consequence or a punishment. And I feel like the way that the Lord fathers us and teaches us is that he gives us help. He gives us people. He gives us the Holy Spirit. He guides us. He comes alongside us. He doesn't ever shame us.
Yeah.
And he doesn't necessarily just
Yeah.
start, ripping things out of our lives because we don't do them well or perfectly. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that must translate into our parenting if he's our model, that a lot of it is guiding and coming alongside and being a partner through the things that are difficult or the things that they don't do well. And that is what keeps connection. Because to a child, adults are big, and sometimes they're scary, even when we don't think that we're scary to a child. We're not trying to be scary, but we can appear very overwhelming and big and scary to a child.
Mm-hmm.
And so really thinking about that and trying to calm ourselves as much as possible and understand that a lot is developmental. It's not personal against the parent. It's not, the child is not trying to cause tons of disruption in the family necessarily. Most of the time, they're just practicing being a person.
Yeah.
And they need a safe space to do that.
Yeah. They're learning. And it's also communication. And I know my daughter's only 5, but I love to just talk her through things, and she understands things. You sit down and have a little chat, and because everything is new, and everything is well, I didn't realize that, or I didn't know, and I'm like, okay, yes, you didn't know, but here's what you should do next time, or think about this, and I like just talking to her through things too, and just I think that communication, and that's how you have built that connection and trust even with your older kids, and then how you were talking about with your teens, those late night discussions, and making sure that you allow for that time of communication with them so that they know that you're always available. And as you were talking about how God our Father, and prayer is a communication with the Lord, and reading the Word of God, a communication of listening to what He has given us through His Word. And I feel like that helps kind of us understand why the whys behind what we do, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Yes, that communication is key. And I love hearing how you enjoy talking with your daughter, because I know that that's how the Lord feels about us, that He delights in conversation with us, just talking about anything, hearing each other's thoughts and ideas and dreams. And so, yes, I think that is so sweet that you feel that delight when you talk to your child. And like you said, everything is new to a little child. That is the joy and the wonder that they bring into our lives, that everything is amazing, everything is new. And I think that's something that we want to keep alive in them. That's the joy of this life. Even as we get older, is continuing to be amazed at the people around us, and what the Lord is doing is vital to a rich life.
Yeah, for sure. Keeping that wonder allows us to see hope.
Yes.
For the future and in everything. And so that's really key. Yeah. So how do you intentionally foster a sense of worth in your child that isn't tied to achievement or appearance? Especially since, you have teens and young adults. I think that, it can starts from young age, but in those ages where those things are pretty important, how do you intentionally foster that sense of worth aside from those things?
Yes. I think it is instilling in them their true identity, just like, we were talking about our identity as a child of the Lord. They obviously are as well, and teaching them from an early age what He thinks about them, what He says about them, and having those be foundational truths in their hearts before they begin to hear what the world might say about them.
Yeah.
And so definitely knowing their identity early on. And I believe that they will focus on the things that we talk about and praise. So if we are only praising the A plus or the home run or the accomplishment,
Mm-hmm.
then their worth is going to be based on performance.
Mm-hmm.
But if we are focusing on praising character, that you followed through with something that was really hard and you saw it to the end, or even something relational, you really reached out to that child who was hurting. And, I saw that strength in you, pointing out different character strengths in them. I feel like that takes a lot of the pressure off of the outcome,
Mm-hmm.
because we all have control over what we do, how we respond in a moment. We don't always have control over the outcome.
Right.
And so that's where it starts to be, an impossible thing. We cannot strive for perfection and actually hit it. And but what we can do is, focus on our character and our responses. And so cultivating those things in our kids happens with what we focus on and what we praise. And it isn't wrong, to celebrate the A plus or the home run or whatever the achievement is, but that's not everything. And that's not the biggest focus. And even reminding our children when they fail at something, maybe their team doesn't win, or maybe they didn't, score well on something, that it's okay. They tried their best and that their worth is not tied to that performance. It does not speak of who they are, but the Lord speaks of who they are. And so returning back to that and just keeping that their identity separate from their performance, because it is.
Yeah. Yeah. I love how you said that. It's so beautifully said, because it's like exactly what is the differentiating factor in performance-based versus a solid understanding of their identity is knowing who their character is, or what their character is, which will define who they are, versus the performance and outcomes of what they do. Because no matter what they accomplish, if they don't have a good character, then it's kind of all a wash. Yeah, and so developing that inherent value of, or valuing of, character over accomplishments will help them in the long run, more than just you gotta get an A. Yeah, I love that. That's so beautifully said. And how has becoming a parent changed the way you define success or performance in your own life? Because that itself is another performance sometimes.
It feels like it. So I was a young adult. It was before I had children, when the Lord really freed me from performance and perfectionism. And I'm so grateful that happened earlier in my life, because it made me more aware of it as I went into parenting, and had a family of my own. And again, it goes so much, it's back to identity, and it's back to who He says we are aside from what we do. Because we are not what we do. We are who we are because of Him and in Him. And so that helped me a lot in motherhood. Most of the work is unseen and it's hard. There's a lot of unseen things. And it's just the day to day and the small little moments that add up to really big things, but it's a lot of unseen work. And so I had to get comfortable with that I'm not getting an award. I'm not getting accolades. I'm not getting a paycheck. There's nothing coming in that I can see yet as I'm, tending the soil, watering, doing all of the things to grow these little sprouts
Mhm.
because you just aren't going to see fruit yet. So I had to get really comfortable with that as a mom, knowing that this is something that I'm in for the long haul
Yeah.
and trusting the Lord that the
Mhm.
fruit would come later. And you get
Yeah.
little glimpses of it along the way, but
Yeah.
it's really amazing when your kids become adults. And
Mhm.
then it's like you've got this full blown oak tree,
Yeah.
that is
Mhm.
grown and beautiful.
Mhm.
And you know what was behind all of that.
Mhm.
It's years and years and years of tending the soil and of the
Yeah.
unseen work. And
Mhm.
so my mindset had to be that of the long haul
Mhm.
and of really trusting the Lord that He was doing a work in their hearts,
Mhm.
even when I couldn't see it
Yeah.
and when there wasn't a ton of evidence on the outside. That
Yeah.
He says He's doing that and He is pursuing them. And I've got to believe that and partner with Him in
Mhm.
that work
Mhm.
of training and tending to my kids' hearts.
Yeah.
So like I said, I'm so grateful that he freed me from that earlier. And, that's not a one and done. Anything that he
Mhm.
frees us from, it's often a daily battle. And so
Yeah.
that has been my journey of learning to
Mhm.
parent my kids without perfectionism, without
Yeah.
being so focused on their
Mhm.
behavior and so focused on the outside, but really connecting with them and watering and growing the inside and, their hearts and their character. And then you get the fruit, you get the
Yeah.
harvest, and
Yeah.
it's so worth it.
Yeah. That's true. A friend of ours once was talking about, because they do a lot of work with different kids and fostering and a lot of other hard work with kids in different situations. And she told me one thing when my husband and I were first married, and she was like, no matter what you do, always do it with a lot of love and care. Do your best, but don't always expect a lot in return. And because you may or may not get it back in return, but keep doing your best and sharing and showing that love, because you never know what will happen in the future from those seeds that you do plant. And so it is a hard work, and it's not easy. You don't ever see it immediately sometimes. And
Mm-hmm.
so
Yeah,
but as you said, you hope to one day see those oak trees planted and rooted by those still waters. And so, yeah, it's hard to delineate that success and performance um, as a mom sometimes, because that is your work that you're doing, raising these kids and children alongside, the fathers. And both of you guys are invested in in their lives, and you want
mm-hmm.
to see the success, and you want to see the growth and the outcome, but you have to give it to God. It is God's work in the end. They are under His hand of guidance and protection, and sometimes we just gotta know that you know we leave them in the hands of the Lord, right?
Absolutely. Yes,
Yeah,
that is a big part of that trusting
yeah.
and letting go of the control that we want to have so
Mm-hmm.
badly,
Mm-hmm.
because our children will grow up and make their own choices. And
Yeah.
I mean, that's very true. When you get into the teen years, they
Mm-hmm.
are figuring their life out on their own, and you cannot control what they do. I mean,
Yeah.
that would not be a great attempt, to control every little tiny thing about
Yeah.
their life.
Yeah.
And that is where trust is really tested,
Yeah.
and where a lot of that motherly instinct and energy to want to protect and control
Mm-hmm.
is then transferred into prayer.
Yeah.
Like all of that energy has to go there, because
Yeah.
We all have that feeling. We know what's best. We want to protect. We want to control. We want the best
Mhm.
outcome for our children,
Mhm.
but they must make their own choices. And so all of that gets taken to the Lord, like
Yeah.
all the time.
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, that kind of goes into the next question here is how do we bridge that gap between the adult and child? And what does connected parenting look like in your day to day life, especially during challenging moments? Because that connection is what will hopefully help with that trust later on.
Absolutely. A lot of that in challenging moments, a big part of it is trying to stay calm ourselves as the
Mhm.
parent and not overreact unnecessarily because we
Mhm.
want our kids to continually be able to come to us
Mhm.
and we want to be a safe space for them. So we have to start that even when they're little, being a safe
Mhm.
space where they can come and tell us anything
Yeah.
and we don't overreact. Now, it doesn't mean that there won't be a consequence or there won't be something that we're going to teach or walk through,
Mhm.
but that doesn't have to be the first reaction.
Yeah.
It really doesn't. That is something that can be revisited. But being a safe place means that I'm calm in the moment and
Mhm.
using as much self control as I possibly can
Yeah.
to hear what is being said, to ask questions. How did that make you feel? What did you do next? What did you think about,
Mhm.
XYZ? And hearing their hearts out for a little bit
Yeah.
before we go into instruction mode, lecture
Right.
mode. Let me tell you what it should be. And of
Yeah.
course, it's different, for different children and different ages.
Mhm.
But the connection is there that we're actually interested in them as a person
Mhm.
and not just what they've done.
Mhm.
That we are not more interested in their behavior or what they've done wrong or right than on who they actually are.
Mhm.
That's the big distinction. And so that connection, like you said, happens a lot with communication and
Mhm.
being present and being available and being willing to listen, being interested in what they're interested in,
Yeah.
whether you know anything about it or not, like
Yeah.
taking an interest of what is important to them.
Mhm.
And, when our children are small, their problems are small.
Yeah.
They're low risk things most of the
Yeah.
time,
Yeah.
but treating them as if they're big because they
Mhm.
are big
To
to our
them.
little children.
Yeah.
And as they get older, and their problems grow, there's a lot more risk going on with their decisions at that time,
Mhm.
but it's still the same importance and it's still the same parent who is
Yeah.
listening and interested in what the child has to say.
Yeah. In a way, one thing that came to my mind is that sometimes we think of the word discipline in being a good parent, and we associate the word discipline with anger. And anger and discipline are what goes together in order for us to have good children. But I feel like discipline is not anger, and discipline is necessary for having regulations, rules, routines, have some form of um, schedule, especially like young kids. They need that. They need that feeling in order to feel safe. They want to know, like, okay, what do I need to do? What's safe? What's good? What's right? What's wrong? But we might confuse that discipline with anger, and that is the way to correct children. That's the way to create better kids, better adults. And I feel like it's been confused, and um, something that is um, how do we get over that, that way of thinking?
Hmm. I think that anger comes in when parents do place more emphasis on behavior than they do with connection. So even having that mindset that connection is more important than behavior, that relationship is more important than rules, helps you to relax a little bit about the behavior. And discipline actually means instruction. Like it doesn't mean punishment.
Right.
Punishment is entirely different. So when we are disciplining our kids, we are instructing them, and we're teaching them about life. And like you said, we're creating structure and security in their life, because yes, we must have routines, and that kind of structure does give them, security in their hearts, and they can know what's happening. They can know what's going on. And so, yeah, that discipline really is instruction, and it's less focus on the behavior, and it's understanding child development too, like what our children are actually capable of at each age. Because we might have an expectation that is not realistic at all for their self-regulation or for what they can remember at a time, for how they react. So that's a huge part of it too, is really understanding what is realistic, for my child at this certain age. And then also being able to separate my identity from my children's behavior. Because that's where a lot of anger can come into. If I feel that their behavior is a direct reflection of who I am, then I'm going to be really upset when they can't keep it together.
Yeah.
But it's not. Their behavior, my identity is fixed, has nothing to do with what they do. And my identity doesn't even have anything to do with what I do. Because it's fixed in the Lord, before anything is ever said and done. And so keeping that separation in mind is really freeing. It frees us up to train our kids and to actually delight in them, and to see them as these little people that need guidance, not these little people who are just, destroying everything and trying to irritate me and trying to push my buttons.
Yeah. Yeah. I like how you said that. Discipline is not punishment, it's instruction. And bridging that gap between adult and child is having that connection in those little moments, and controlling, self-control of our own emotions, allowing ourselves to not identify their failures as our own failures. And or their whatever their emotions are going on as our failures. And I think that's right. Then we blame ourselves. We feel we've let ourselves down. We've let them down, and then we lose control of the situation. But we have to kind of distinguish that it's not on us, but although, we do have responsibility as parents, but it's not a reflection of us just because they've had a bad day.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's not our identity. Yes.
Yeah. Yes. And what daily habits or routines do you, or rituals help you stay connected with your children? And does your husband have different habits and routines or rituals that he does to stay connected with the kids? Or are they kind of the same as yours?
Some of the things that are similar, that are kind of just family habits for us, are meal times. And that was more frequent when everyone was younger. Now we have teenagers and young adults, so their schedules are more their own. But even now, we still maintain one family night a week where it's just the 6 of us having dinner and doing something fun. But when they were little, it started with a lot of meals together, not with screens, and, just being together and speaking. So that alone that's something that's very frequent, that happens constantly throughout the day. And I think now, as they're older, I try to be so conscious about when they do want to talk, that I completely stop what I'm doing, that I give them my full attention,
Mhm.
and that we're not just like, talking at each other while,
Yeah.
moving through a room or anything.
Right.
My husband is really great at creating experiences with the kids.
Mhm.
So like when each of our sons turned 18, he took them on a special trip.
Mhm.
We did a special thing when they turned 13. So making
Mhm.
those kind of different connections.
Yeah.
And then also just having one-on-one time or one-on-two. Sometimes one of us would take a
Mhm.
child out, or one of us would take two children out,
Uh-huh.
and just have like a little date, like have an
Yeah.
ice cream date. Or now with my kids' age, I've started taking each of them out to coffee. So we'll
Mhm.
just go out one-on-one. And even though we do still talk in our home, it just
Uh-huh.
creates a different environment to get
Yeah. Yeah.
out of this space where I feel like I have so many things to do.
Mhm.
And, we go out to a coffee shop and we just talk,
Yeah.
and I do a lot of listening and
Mhm.
asking, because that is what I'm intentionally there to do.
Yeah.
There's no instruction,
Yeah.
it's just like hanging out with a friend and hearing what's going on in their life.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, my daughter, she kind of describes it as mommy, daughter time, or daddy, daughter time. And she really differentiates that. She's like,
Mhm.
no, now it's time for daddy, daughter time, or mommy, daughter time. And, she loves if we we'll pick her up, and one of us will pick her up, or, take her out on something different, and that creates that special, or keeps that bond close. And I think but that's so true. Like, even when they're so small, they realize that,
Mm.
and they treasure that. It's amazing. They're so tiny, and you think, what are they thinking? But they really understand so much, and they're
Mhm.
taking so much in, so much more than we ever really realize. And so, but yeah, it's so important to keep that individual connection or time with the child, even if it's 5 minutes, just like something really quick. Just to, I I feel like when I take time to look in her eyes and just be looking straight at her, even if it's just for the second that she's saying something to me,
Yes.
it makes a
Yeah, that's so
difference.
true. It doesn't have to be long.
Yeah.
We've coupled a lot of things with a meal. So
Mhm.
it sometimes at lunch, I would play a game with all of the kids or one of the kids, if it, just if there was one there.
Uh-huh.
Just those little moments where you're already going to sit down and eat,
Yeah.
and kids aren't necessarily going to talk the whole time. Some want to talk a lot, and
Uh-huh.
others need more of an activity to create
Right.
that connection, or
Mhm.
it might be connection through touch.
Yeah.
So if you're watching a movie together and they're snuggled up to you, that
Mhm.
could be very connecting for a child.
Mhm.
Or, they want you to just scratch their back before they go to sleep,
Yeah.
also very connecting with the child. So all
Mhm.
of those intentional moments
Yeah.
are important. And just like you said, it doesn't have to be long, but it's
Mhm.
intentional, and
Yeah.
they know it. They
Yeah.
feel it.
Yeah. Yeah. It's amazing. And what a difference it does make. Because we're working, we're doing this or that. But when we do take that little moment, it makes a difference.
Mhm.
And my daughter, she is so funny. She'll be like, I'm more important than work, mommy. Or I'm more important than this, or, and I'm like, yes, you are. You are.
That is so cute.
She's so funny. But so how do you repair a connection when it's strained?
That is excellent. Okay, so I recently had our therapist gave us this suggestion, and it was fantastic. So
Uh-huh.
with one of my children, she suggested that we have set aside time each day to do an activity. either together or side by side, but it was something that we could both enjoy. And so I got something that we could kind of craft and build together. And so we set aside like 30 minutes a day that worked in our schedule. And we just worked on our project together. And it was very restorative, because during that time, it was not time for instruction or correction or talking through a task list, or what needed to be done or accomplished. It was just time for us to be together and enjoy doing something together. And sometimes there was a lot of conversation, and sometimes there wasn't a lot of conversation, or we would play music while we were doing our project.
Yeah.
And it really restored that breach that we had at the moment. And also softened my heart toward that child, because I was, very frustrated during that time as well. And so having something that was different, active, but not part of our normal, to-do life of just, like I said, instruction, correction, all the stuff that we can get stuck in. And it was just something fun. But we had lost some of that. And so I needed that suggestion that you need to bring something like that back in. And we did. And it was super helpful. There are many kids who they need an activity, they need something to do in order to be able to share and talk. They're not as easily going to just, sit across the table from you with a cup of tea and, be able to spill their feelings.
Yeah.
So they need to have something to do. And if we can learn, what do they enjoy, what is important to them, and jump into their world and set aside all of the instruction and correction and just hang out with them and enjoy doing whatever that thing is for a while, that creates a lot of repair for connection that was lost. And of course, if they're, if I need to apologize for something, that absolutely, needs to be part of the conversation. But even if there's just a breach, like we just need to enjoy something. We need to have fun together and not think or talk about all the stuff that has been stressful.
Yeah. 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 Just speaking to that point of saying sorry, I feel like that's so huge. And even if it's a small thing, I always try to make sure I say, I'm really sorry. I hope you forgive me, as a follow-up question, just so that she knows the importance of forgiveness and apologizing, and being the first to do it, or just to do it even if you don't feel like it. And because I feel like those two things are huge in life, because unforgiveness leads to so much more pain for yourself. And I think that kind of goes along with, repairing connections and relationships in general, and so that's huge, is, being able to come to that point of, apologizing and forgiving and asking for forgiveness and vocalizing that very easily, and let it just be a part of your nature to, or just do that with your kids often, even for the small things. Because then it'll be easier for those bigger things. And and then you were also mentioning the activity, and just because I'll ask my daughter, "How was school today? What were you doing?" And oh, it was good, and but then you're doing something with them, and then she'll be telling all sorts of other stuff that happened that I'm like, oh, okay, well, she didn't mention that earlier, So, but it's so true. Activity is so important for them. And how has your understanding of emotional connection evolved through parenting? How has it impacted your relationships outside of the home? Because I'm sure, like, over the 20 years, how, it's evolved and changed over time.
Absolutely. I think that I think it kind of goes both ways. As as I've learned how to parent my kids more and how to see their uniqueness and really see the gifts that God has given them and learn how to pull those out and strengthen them, that also translates into me seeing everybody I know that way and looking at everybody and being curious and interested in the way that God has uniquely wired every person, and being able to call that out, um, and encourage people and just to connect more with people's hearts. I think it's helped me to be more open about just what's going on in my own heart and my own story. That's definitely grown. With my children and in friendships, and also in mentorship in the ladies that I mentor. That has helped me in parenting because when I'm sitting across from someone at a coffee shop and I'm listening to them, I'm not telling them what to do with their life. I'm
Mm-hmm.
truly interested and invested, and I'm asking guiding questions
Mm-hmm.
and encouraging them, and simultaneously listening to the Lord, and if there's something that he wants me to say to them.
Yeah.
And so I've taken that into my parenting, like I said,
Mm-hmm.
especially with teens and having to make that shift to parenting teens. And so it's kind of been both ways,
Mm-hmm.
that just having a deeper emotional connection and emotional awareness of
Mm-hmm.
relationships really does overflow everywhere,
Yeah.
into all of my relationships. And it just gives me a greater appreciation for the Lord and how he's uniquely made each person
Mm.
and how special that is.
Yeah. And were you involved in mentorship before you had kids, or did it like go flow into being a mentor after having kids? Or
That started when I started volunteering in a youth group.
Mhm.
And I knew that so I was college age and I was volunteering in a high school youth group,
Uh-huh.
and then I married a youth pastor. And so ministry has always been a part of our lives. And so I'd have, a group of middle school girls or high school girls that I
Mhm.
would lead in a small group. And then I would have these one-off meetings because someone would ask to meet, privately about something.
Right.
And that just kind of turned into more long-term mentorship
Mhm.
relationships where someone would ask, like, would you mentor me, or can we meet
Mhm.
regularly? And so yeah, that started when I was in college, and has kind of been
Yeah.
there ever since. Obviously has ebbed and flowed in different
Mhm.
seasons.
Yeah.
Um, but it's definitely something that I get to enjoy much more of now
Mhm.
with my time, and is
Yeah.
something that I love very, very much. I love those one-on-one conversations
Yeah.
so much. Love encouraging ladies.
Yeah. And it's kind of just overflowed into Be Parent Wise, and this platform that you have to encourage parents um, through social media and then eventually through your book. And how would you encourage other um, women out there who, um, you know, they're parenting, they're in the trenches? You had um, been, doing mentorship and your passion, your ministry before kids, a little bit here and there through while having kids, and then now you're able to revisit it in a more maybe more time available at this time in your life, maybe. But so, how would you encourage women through these different stages that they're um, in parenting and still wanting to keep their identities and dreams alive?
Absolutely. Yes. I definitely think that all of that can coexist. But that is very unique to each person and each family. So, I mean, it's not one size fits all.
Yeah.
Not everyone is going to be a stay-at-home mom. Not everybody wants to be a stay-at-home mom. And we all have all of these different gifts and callings. And so what that specifically looks like for each person is really for, each person to discuss with the Lord and with a spouse if they're married, and be realistic about what does that look like in this season, which is another thing that's really important to remember, is because our seasons change frequently.
Yeah.
So it feels like, oh, it's going to be like this forever, but it really isn't. There are just so many different seasons and ebbing and flowing with what our personal needs are at a certain time, what our family's needs are at a certain time. And so being faithful and planted in that moment is so key. And knowing that that there's a bigger picture, because it's so easy when we're in the trenches just to like get this tunnel vision of like, this is it, like this is all I got right now. But there is a bigger picture, and that each of us is part of a bigger plan. And raising those kids is absolutely holy, eternal work. There is so much, like we talked about, fruit to come that might not be seen yet, but all of that unseen work is not unseen by the Lord. He sees all of it, and he is so pleased with all of that. And his spirit empowers us in all of that. We're not alone.
Yeah.
Even when we feel like we're alone, we are not alone. He is accessible and there, and he is the model. He absolutely is the parenting model. So I would encourage ladies to, on a practical side, explore that, with the Lord or with a spouse or with a group of friends, maybe even, work out schedule wise, something where they do have time that someone else can watch the kids so that they can pursue something. Trade off with a friend, if you have a spouse who's at home a certain, time of the day, and ask for things that you need. That's a hard one for a lot of us, is to actually ask for help or ask for what we need. So we think everybody else is also so busy, so they can't help, but most people are willing to help. And so making trades with that, seeing, when can I create time to pursue something else that I love? When can I create time to exercise, to take care of myself? That's so important. And so asking for help, creating an actual strategy for that, and realizing that your work is eternally important. It is so valuable, so highly valuable. But it's a lot of under the soil work for many, many years. And that is the nature of growth. If something is going to grow really big, then there's got to be a lot of roots that are put down underneath. So it is not for the faint of heart. This is a long haul journey, but there is community out there for people, church groups, mom groups, and the Lord is with you through all of it.
Yeah. And, you can always have a simple prayer and God will always be there for you. Just reach out to him, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah. And what do you want your children to remember most about how you parented them?
Of course, I want them to feel loved. I want them to feel seen and known, and that I took an active interest in who the Lord created them to be, not in who I wanted to shape them to be, but who he actually made them to be deep inside, and that I delighted in them just like he does.
Yeah. Beautiful. Thank you so much, Sarah. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I really appreciate your time for coming on the show and sharing your heart and passion for parenting and connection in parenting. And so thank you all for listening. I hope that you can continue to spark hope in your homes, in your families, in your children, so that that can be a ripple effect of hope wherever you are, wherever they are, and we can keep seeing the wonder in everything. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me.
Thank you, and have a great rest of the week. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Medicine Motherhood Missions. We hope you found inspiration, insight, and a sense of connection in the stories we shared today. If you've enjoyed today's episode, be sure to subscribe and leave us a review. Your feedback helps us reach more listeners like you. Follow us on Instagram for updates, free downloads, and to join a community of like-minded individuals passionate about making a difference through medicine, motherhood, and mission work. Remember, you're not alone in this journey. Until next time, keep sparking hope, keep healing, keep nurturing, and keep making a difference. This is Johanna signing off from Medicine Motherhood Missions. The medical opinions expressed on this podcast are for the informational purposes only and should not be considered as medical advice. Always consult a licensed healthcare provider for personal medical questions or concerns. The views expressed by guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect those of the podcast host.